Welcome to Epic Health Transformations. This is David Burton with
Dr. Stephen Mills.
And we are back again this week. We talk about, epic health transformations where reinvention and good health are the antidote for uncertainty and overwhelm. Stephen, we talked a lot about overwhelm last week, didn't we?
Yes.
And the need to sort of transform and really overcome certain things. And I know one of the reasons that, I adore you is your whole passion toward the body and healing and wellness. We talked a little bit about the idea of transformation and the absence of that or the presence of overwhelm on the body. Can you just maybe recap that for us real quick? Because I think that's really a pivotal piece of information.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, David. And there'll be multiple angles we'll be taking today when we look at reinvention. And the physical body certainly is one of those. If we have problems with an automobile, we can repair it at an auto shop or purchase a new automobile. We can always purchase a home if there's a catastrophe. We have one body. And as far as most of us can tell, it's the only body we're going to have. And so we've adopted various habits. We have various activities of daily living. Maybe it's work duties, essential duties in the workplace. We have recreation that's very important to us. And the bottom line is that many of the things we engage in help us, lift us up, facilitate healing, regeneration, and well-being. And some of the things we participate in can undermine those processes.
Exactly. I was thinking as you were talking about the commercial that says, a body at rest wants more rest, and a body in action wants more action.
Yes.
And reinvention is action. And I can tell you that, I've been giving lectures and seminars and workshops on reinvention since 2007 when the American economy, began to challenge a lot of us. And I've been doing workshops on this topic because many people that have lived their lives on a certain path now have found themselves needing a new path.
Yes.
And, change. Who likes that? No one is going to voluntarily sign up for that because, frankly, I think it sucks. But what are you going to do? You gotta.
Yeah.
We're here, and we've got to adjust our attitude towards a lot of these things.
Yeah.
I think about the spine in all of this because we talked about last week that slumped posture where the body is kind of hanging on itself, you said.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting piece of imagery for me because I envision people who are heavy burdened, and they're stooped and they're worried and they're not smiling. And when they're stooped, their oxygenation isn't even what it should be.
Yeah.
And their organs, because the more, scrunched down you go, there's only so much room in there for your organs to do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, it significantly reduces the ability of the rib cage to expand and take in. Yeah, so oxygen, respiration, it's all inhibited.
And we think about, what is reinvention? When do I need it? Who should be doing it? Well, those are all thoughts and awarenesses that we should have. And if the body isn't functioning optimally or just functioning well, you're not going to be able to have those thoughts to help you reinvent yourself. So this podcast is about defining what it is, defining what reinvention is, even defining who's done it that we've seen. Where does the concept come from? Just giving us some basic information because the outcome on the other end of this discussion, we will all, and I will be doing this too, and for those of you that are listening, please go to our website, epichealthtransformations.com and download the action plan. Because reinvention, I know it's a nice thought. It makes us feel good. It sort of reminds us that we have the capacity to change and do better things for ourselves. But the action plan puts our feet back on the ground and says, here's what I would like to see happen for myself, and here are the tasks and resources that I need and things I have to do to make that reinvention happen. Have you heard of the concept of reinvention before? Do you ever wonder where this idea comes from?
Yeah, I've heard of it in multiple contexts, and I think that one of the things you referred to in the previous podcast was brilliant reason for reinvention, which is when an individual finds themselves in a situation where what they're doing is no longer working. They're maybe a hamster on the wheel, or maybe they even have had a process that worked very, very well for a long time, but because of the economy, because of technology, because of various methods of communication, of the internet, maybe what they're doing worked at one point in time very successfully, but is no longer. So I've heard multiple people finding themselves in situations where they're having to reinvent themselves, whether it's for particularly job trans.
Right. Yes.
Transitioning, job.
You know, the
career.
whole need for reinvention, you know, it's such an important topic. I mean, I have an aunt, she's 75 years old. She graduated college 5 years ago.
Wow.
You know, she was a full-charge bookkeeper, you know, way back in the day. There are no more full-charge bookkeepers. You know, she recognized, wow, I'm healthy and good-looking. I could live another 20 years. What am I going to do for money? And so she decided she would go back to school and learn some new up-to-date bookkeeping and accounting principles and that. And the school actually gave her, you know, 18 months, or they gave her a significant amount of credit for her life and for the work that she had done.
Yeah.
And she graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in finance in like 2 years. So, you know, she's reinvented herself. You know, anyone that has ever heard me speak anywhere knows I always bring up Dame Shirley Bassey. Well, at 77, who do you know that's out there doing disco albums? So reinvention, you know, can be something for a mega superstar like Dame Shirley Bassey. It can be like an everyday person like my 75-year-old aunt. It could be you. It could be me. You know, but the thing that is the tipping point for knowing that that's what's necessary are some feelings that we have and some thoughts that we have that most of us try to run from. You know, the feeling that we have that says something's just not right. You know, I know on the surface everything looks like it's fine, but down in my gut where the truth seems to lie, something's telling me something's not right. I'm uncomfortable.
Sure.
You know, the symptoms that I see, because I'm a consultant for UCSD Medical Center here in San Diego, and I'm familiar with what goes on with people's bodies when reinvention is necessary.
Yeah, I have extensive experience working in a wellness setting, and we have people coming in with various aches or pains or questions, or they maybe have even heard that an individual need not be in great pain or discomfort to visit a chiropractor or a nutritionist or a personal trainer, but you can also do these things to optimize your wellness and tune yourself up better. But a lot of people do come in with pain and symptoms and these things, and that's the exact process that I guide them through. We talk about what has gotten you to where you are right now. A lot of times they're thinking about the neck pain or the back pain, and that could just as easily be a bank account balance, or it could be a career that they're no longer happy in. Of course, in the wellness center setting, it's usually some sort of discomfort. And the very first thing I do is I say, here we are in a cycle, whether there's been procrastination. B.J. Palmer, the developer of chiropractic, the son of the founder, said that procrastination is the #1 enemy of health. And I'll do it tomorrow, or it's not that bad, or I'm managing with this. And so we want to break that cycle. We don't want to procrastinate. We don't want to just demonize the symptoms themselves. Symptoms are a valuable way that our body tells us that something's not quite right. In most cases, there are cases such as chronic pain, these things, but those are signs to me that an individual is positioned perfectly for a transformation,
Right.
for a reinvention. And I start with the mindset. I say the pain is not just in and of itself is not our problem. Let's step back a few steps and look at what stresses we didn't adapt to well in the process that threw off the systems of the body, that threw off the biomechanics. And as those things persist, we have physical manifestations of changes in biomechanics, and then pain as a product. And the greatest transition from the point where they know that there's something not right are solutions. And that's what we'll get into in some of our future podcasts, David, the 6 aspects of health and some of those things.
I've got to tell you, pain is a very powerful communicator for where our lives are.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not suggesting that, someone who's having in the midst of having a heart attack says, gee, I wonder what this is telling me about my life. It's telling you call 911 and get help right away.
Yeah.
But particularly with the back, and one of the things that I've been really aware of is that the spine tells a story. I had a chiropractor working on me, and as he was feeling my spine and doing these things, he asked me, do you feel supported? Do you feel loved? And I thought that was a very interesting, sort of weird kind of a thing to say. But then when I started looking at the body and the spine, there are sections of the body that tell those stories, aren't there? There are sections of the bodies that deal with that. There are sections of the bodies that deal with fear and, issues around money. So when we're talking about what are the indicators that I might need to start considering my circumstances and a potential reinvention of how I'm living, how are you feeling? Are you sleeping well? Are you waking up in the morning feeling like, oh boy, or, oh no, oh, what day is it? And we all know those people that no matter what day it is, the first thing, if you say good morning to them, they say, is it Friday yet? And it's only Tuesday. So, if your outlook is sort of dark or, sort of negative from the very outset, that could be a clue. How you're feeling is a clue. Are you sleeping? Do you feel comfortable? Do you have joy? What about the job you're doing? Because, we can't talk about reinvention without talking about money, and we all need money. And I don't know who does not worry about money. I worry about money all the time. A lot of people do.
Yeah.
But I think that when you're looking at reinventing yourself, because it's an action that has steps to it, that you can wrap your arms around and you can do something, the worry about things dissipates, because I find it very difficult to worry about a circumstance that I'm actively engaged in doing something about.
Yes.
So when we're talking about reinvention, it's not just the circumstances. I mean, obviously someone who's unemployed, and I've coached many people who would say, for example, oh, well, I was this at such and so company and I was laid off. But I was laid off from a previous job where I also held that same position. And my standard response is not to go look for that same position, because apparently if everyone's laying that position off, that's probably not a premier thing to be looking for.
Yeah.
So we say, well, wait a minute, what do you like to do? What are you good at? What have you done? Over the last couple of jobs you've had, what things really made you happy that you loved? You couldn't wait to get in there and be just really engaged and really get your hands dirty with it. And then what tasks did you sort of look at and say, ugh, not this? And the culmination of the sum of all of that is a vision for where you might want to be headed. Yeah. So there's lots of indicators, but the real main thing about the reinvention is you have to sort of wake up and pay attention to where are you right now.
And there are many people who feel that they really have everything together. And David, some of these things that you mentioned are great for that person who feels like most things are going pretty well, to really listen more closely to the first thoughts in the morning. How do you feel about your car? How do you feel about the paint on your house? Some of these things may sound silly, but if the answer is I hate my car, I hate the way my house, those are have a negative cumulative value. The mind-body connection is so powerful. Those sorts of thoughts, boy, that neighbor across the street, these shoes have a hole, any little... It trickles into the body. It affects the physiology.
I am so glad you mentioned that. I am so glad you mentioned that. We've all experienced leaving the house a little bit late. And we say, oh my God, I'm late. So the minute you speak that or think that and have that thought and hold that thought in place for any significant or insignificant period of time, what happens? No matter where you are, there's a stoplight. There's people crossing. It's like the universe is sort of stopped its ordinary functioning just to get on our nerves. So when you talk about the pain and the car and all those types of things, not only is it about thoughts, but it's about words, not even words that are spoken, because the language that we use with ourselves often creates the need for a reinvention, because many of us depend.
Self-talk. Yeah.
That self-talk is really critical because it has sunk lots of people, and it's damaged and diminished people's ability to feel respected in and of themselves, and and the feeling of value, having that feeling be present. And so when people embark with me on reinvention, and I have worked this program with hundreds of thousands of people, it's amazing how everyone's starting point might be in a different place.
Yeah.
And so the whole concept of reinvention is basically, once you know that you need one, you start where you stand. Mm-hmm. It's not one of those things that you say, I'll do it when I lose 10 pounds, or when the house is clean, or I'll do it when I get a new job. The reinvention is so central and so seminal to all of those other events that it has to start right now.
Charlie Ward was coaching a consultant who he was going to help build his practice, and the doctor was very paralyzed and didn't know where to turn. And Charlie Ward said, I want you to do something for me, okay? So I tell you to. I want you to set your phone down. He said, I want you to go outside, okay, pick up a small stone, throw the rock up in the air, and wherever it lands, start there.
There you go.
And I love that because it doesn't have to be complicated. Baby steps, and so I really
it can start anywhere, because what does it take for someone to reinvent themselves? I mean, basically, the awareness that what I'm doing now, this isn't working for me. It's not working, and it's not working because my back is stiff. I'm overweight. You mentioned, I heard the word procrastination a little bit in what you were saying. And I have to tell you, procrastination is an interesting thing to look at, because there are some therapists that will say to you that procrastination has a lot to do with your ability to feel secure in yourself.
Yes.
There are some that will say that procrastination has a lot to do with the fact that you may or may not love yourself enough. So when you look at these surface topics that come up when we're reinventing ourselves, don't overlook the messages that are tied to them.
Yes.
Because wherever we start, that's where we start. And what we learn is what we learn. The people that are dialing in to hear us are learning something. But Stephen, you and I both know, I'm sitting here looking at you, we're learning while we're engaged in this process. So we're actually reinventing ourselves sitting right here. I know I can feel it myself. Where does it start? What does it take? It doesn't take much. It takes a desire to know there's something better for me. I still feel like I haven't sung that song yet. Yeah. I haven't done that thing. I haven't climbed that mountain. I feel like I've got something else in me that I just haven't been able to touch yet. Great. Keep listening, please, because why you should do this? Listen, there are people that live till 90 and never meet their dream. The end goal is not the prize here. The process is the prize.
The journey.
Yeah, it's the journey.
Yeah.
Because there's something to be said for engaging in behaviors that promote the best of us. When I first met you, Stephen, the first thing was I didn't need any more friends to be supportive. Because in my own life, in my experience, people where friends are supportive, what that ultimately means is these are people that support bad behaviors of you, and then they want you to do the same for them. And it's enough of that.
Yeah, so
that's what the 90s were for. So, so now I would really like for people to be success partners, so that they can say, David, I know what you're doing, but that's not going to take you where you think it is.
Yeah.
That's what we came together to do.
Exactly.
That's what and in your San Diego Success Club is a wonderful tool for that.
Thank you.
And initially we wanted to name ourselves Success Partners, but when we Googled that, we did not like what we saw people.
All kinds of things.
Yeah, later for that. But Stephen and I are success buddies, which means that our behaviors need to match the success that we want to see.
Yes.
That also means that when you're reinventing yourself and success is something that you want to experience, it doesn't need to necessarily be defined so minutely. But what it does promote is a sense that there's an accountability here. you're going to probably have a little something to say if you see me engaged in behaviors that are
Sure.
going to take me off
Sure.
off the course.
The journey, the process.
Absolutely.
And,
so why do this? Well, why not?
Why not?
Why not do this? We're going to be here no matter what. So do you want to be miserable? And do you want to be a person who takes the cue for their day from whatever local news broadcast you listen to or watch?
Yeah.
Because they don't make any money when they tell you what's right with the world. Just food for thought there.
Yeah.
You know, we're living in a time where there's so much exposure, and we've got things like Facebook and Twitter, which would be great, you know, mediums to spread wonderful and empowering messages, and there are empowering messages on there, but often it's amazing how many people use them for the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So where are you going to take your cues from? So one of the elements of reinvention is, who's influencing you?
Association is very, very powerful. Robert Kiyosaki says that we will end up being the sum total of the average of the five people we spend the most time with, and so we have to stop and look around, and include ourselves.
Yes.
You know, we talked about why seek reinvention. One of the things I've heard along those lines is that people will only change when they associate a greater pain with their current situation than they fear the pain might be to change. And we're here to say that need not be your mantra. That need not be the reason that you can change for positive reasons, that you can seek a better quality life. Why not see what we can see? Why not improve our cardiovascular conditioning? And the reason why I'm going down that path of thought is for a couple of reasons. Because you've mentioned associations. We may have people in our lives who mumble or chuckle under their breath and say, "Oh, Susie, right, like she could lose that weight." Or so and so, they're never going to be able to stop smoking or stop drinking. And those voices, but our own voices. It's been said before many times that if our friends spoke to us the way we speak to ourselves, we'd hate them.
Good point.
You know,
yeah.
And so we have associations, and we have our own self-talk to think about. And let's not change only when we feel more pain than we think changing will hurt. Let's change for the positive reasons, for the example we'll set for our children.
Yes.
Our children are watching what we do. That's where they're learning their habits. Our grandchildren are watching what we do. Our friends are watching what we do. So let's not just change for ourselves. Let's change for all of these people and for the ripple effects that will have for generations
I wish
to come.
that were my case, but I have to tell you, pain has been the catalyst for the majority of changes I have made. But I will tell you this. You know, one example, you know, many, many years ago, about 20 years ago, I quit smoking.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And one of the things I did prior to quitting smoking was I thought it through. Because I knew that there was a high recidivism rate for that. And there are lots of people, "Oh, I quit." And then next week, "Well, I'm only smoking 2. It's like, oh, God, I did not want that to be my story. Yeah. So I was concerned about gaining weight. So I had a Pilates instructor twice a week that came to the house, began really watching my diet, talked to my physician about what tools might be available to help me quit smoking. Ultimately, I used the patch at that time. This was many years ago. So what I learned from that was sometimes the reinvention means that we envision what we'd like to have and we work back. I wanted to be a non-smoker. And as a result, I thought, well, what's the plan for this? Because I want it to be sustainable. And I don't want to have any of the circumstances that have befallen others to befall me. I want to be really successful and happy.
Sure.
I don't want to be an unhappy non-smoker. I mean, what would the point of that be? And so, you know, I put some thought into what I wanted to see happen. And that's what reinvention is, thinking about it. There's an activity that I do with large groups. It's called a Now Next. And I've done this for, you know, college professors and, you know, people that work on the roads here in California and everybody in between. And it's so interesting because it's just really basic. People think, oh, it's going to be so complicated. So I say, no, everybody, it's really complicated. Take out a blank sheet of paper. Ooh, it's going to be really hard. And basically, you just draw 2 circles on a blank sheet of paper. You draw two, and then in the first circle, you title that circle Now. Within that circle, and make it a big circle. In that circle, the things that occupy your mind, the things that represent fear and anxiety, circumstances that are just present for you in the moment of doing that exercise, give them words and put them on the page. Also, the things that make you happy, put those on there too. The Now circle is simply a representation of your starting point. Where are you right now? Good, bad, and ugly. The second circle, and I would ask that people put a couple of inches in between one circle and the next on a landscaped page. The next circle is titled Next. What would you like to see for yourself? Examples include, I'd like to worry less about money. I'd like to feel better in my body. I'd like to feel more value for myself. I'd like to have more respect for myself. I'd like that negative self-talk to diminish. Whatever the vision is for you. And by the way, those examples were all mine. Yeah, wow. Talk about self-disclosure.
Learn all about David.
Yeah, I know. See, I told you, just dial back in. Now, you leave the space in between because the space in between shows you where you are and where you want to go. When you look at that space in between, that's the ladder or the map, the path that's going to take you to the next spot. Now, the next thing that kind of is important about this is that stuff in your head. You know, change. How long does it take to make a new habit? I think Stephen Covey drummed this into our heads in the 80s. Typically, they say 28 days.
28 days.
28 days. So 7, 7, 7, because number 7 is a very important number, right? Okay. And coincidentally, most rehabs are 30 days. Don't ask me why I know that. And no, this isn't vodka. It's a bottle of water. It takes 28 days because of how our brains are wired. You know, imagine file cabinets that are accustomed to receiving the same data over and over again.
I see.
Okay, so those file cabinets begin to become quite comfortable receiving the same data over and over. So when the data comes in, the brain knows exactly where to put it. Well, if you're changing your habits, whether it's becoming a person who's more aware of their negative self-talk and they're replacing that with positive self-talk, when you're making a decision about food and you're saying, you know, I'd love that drive-through burger, but the reality is I really need to eat something green. You know, your brain is saying out loud, what in the world is this mayhem? This is blasphemy. What are you doing? So the discomfort people have that first month when they're making a positive change is natural. It's normal. It's the brain trying to catch up with what's new coming in. Mm-hmm. As uncomfortable as that might be, there's a process that's been around for a while, and I have this on our website, epichealthtransformations.com, where you can also go to our website and get a reading list. You know, the content for these podcasts is our life experience, but also from the hundreds and hundreds of books that we read every year. And many of you have heard of a book called The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity. You could also call this a spiritual path to reinvention, too, because when you talk about reinvention means learning new things, building new habits. At the same time, it means unlearning things that no longer serve you.
Yes.
Because we said earlier, a reinvention is necessary when what you're doing isn't working anymore. Mm-hmm. So you have to unlearn some things. So one of the things that this book is really good for is they talk about the morning pages. Mm. You get up in the morning and you write 3 pages of whatever is in your head. Now, what I've learned, because I've done this many times, I'm doing it again right now, in fact. And so it's interesting how the morning time sets the stage for everything else. And without really thinking about it consciously, you wake up in the morning, oh, my back, oh, I need that cup of coffee. And so each morning, imagine you're revalidating negative habits. Oh, I'm always late. You know, oh, I'm not good at this. Or you're having flashbacks to something else that didn't work. Well, when you take that negative self-talk out of your brain and put it on paper, I can't explain to you what that transformation is like, because I've even begun to experience, as those negative self-talk tidbits come back, I'm able to say to myself, David, the only reason that's happening is because you're making a positive change. That's all. Don't get in your own way. And so, for those of you that are inclined to go on our website and download your action plan, I have to tell you, getting this book, which you can, by the way, get off Amazon.com for pennies on the dollar at this point, it would be a great first step. It would be a great first step because we have to eliminate a lot of the negative stuff that we've accumulated.
And that reminds me of a transformational experience I've had. As silly as it may sound, I watch actually very, very little television. I went for years without cable, but we do need to eliminate some of the patterns that we've borrowed for a while, and some of them maybe helped us stay in unhealthy relationships because we got love out of them, but we're willing to put up with the abuse or the neglect.
Or we were with the person we thought they were the only ones who would love us.
Yes, and so we need to take out the trash, and which reminds me of a couple of shows I have caught on television that were very shocking to me and very eye-opening. Are they sound silly, but shows such as Kitchen Nightmares or Bar Rescue is another one. And what happens is Chef Ramsay, and then there's a gentleman, I don't recall his name, he does the bar rescues. He goes into these food establishments and in the other show, the bars. And what happens is it's these establishments that are struggling, and they're sometimes some of them are months from closing, and they completely chew out. They're pretty ruthless. Remodel the place. Yeah. They fire people if not. It's a complete makeover. And what happens is it's amazing. Many of these restaurants or bars in the other show that have been struggling, many of them are run by beautiful people that have a lot of heart. Some of them even had decades of great success. And again, this goes back to sometimes we're doing things that worked for a while, but they're not serving us any longer. And but because generations roll over, or because buildings, the facility can degenerate or deteriorate, and they're not doing. But what happens? As a lot of these people had emotional attachments to what once was a name of an establishment that just doesn't make sense nowadays. Maybe they got comfortable. They never wanted to change the decor because it was the way mom or grandpa set it up. So sometimes we're really attached to things for very, very legitimate reasons, or so we feel. And but the moral of the story is that sometimes you have to clean house, you have to take out the trash, you have to look at a new, fresh way of looking at some of these things. And Les Brown, and these restaurants go on to do amazing things. And the last thing I want to mention along these lines are that Les Brown once said, the international legend of public speaking and motivation, Les Brown stated that the graveyard, the number one most valuable resource of information and knowledge is the graveyard, because of all of the ideas and thoughts and poems and books and novels and inventions that were never written. People carried these things just as a thought, just as a feeling they know could do good, but it never came to life. It was never written. It was never invented. And I don't know that could ever be changed completely, but that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this subject, because those people listening right now may have a book, or maybe it's a teaching method,
or a painting, a sculpture, or
a way of helping raise children,
wanting to
that
volunteer,
could result in more self-esteem. And so that's why I believe you, David, and I really want to. What we really want to communicate to people is that we can breathe life into these ideas that we have and bring them to the world around us.
And the whole idea of just reframing where you are right now, because there's always more than one way of looking at something. The majority of the time there is, and sometimes when we're not in the mindset of reinvention and all that entails, we don't get to reframe something. We see things as failures or successes with no gray area. And sometimes there are a lot of people who have just silently given up on their lives. I was giving a motivational talk to a large group of people at a convention center not that long ago, and I knew a lot about these people because I'd worked with different groups within this organization, and and they'd been through a lot. They'd really been through a lot, and so I asked them. I said, "Tell me, all the chaos and change and upheaval," I said, "what does it cost you? What's the biggest thing that's happened to you as a result of that?" And many of them said that their ambition had been driven from them, and they also felt that they no longer had any hope.
Wow.
And I stopped for him. To acknowledge and really honor what that person had said, I just stopped. I didn't say anything. I just let that hover in the air, because I knew that although it was only one person that said it, there were thousands of heads nodding, in agreement with that.
Yeah.
And so I thought, part of reinvention isn't just redoing something or stepping back and saying, where am I now? Where do I want to go? But a lot of it also has to do with reframing our thinking around what has happened to us. Memories often cannot be trusted.
No.
People get to be 40, 50, 60, and they start waxing sentimental and recasting the past.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we redecorate the past, that's energy that really should be, utilized more appropriately for decorating and really creating a better future. So, I want to just caution people that this topic has brought up a lot of fear for me, and it's brought up a lot of emotion, because you're moving from what you had, even if it was awful, and you're moving to something that's a question mark. But the question mark is what you create. So, where do you find strength in that? Well, you find strength in this because this is something you're creating, something you're doing in a process that you own. Some of the components of reinvention have to do with resilience. And people say, I've asked hundreds of thousands of folks, what does resilience mean? And what do you think the number one answer is when I ask that? What's resilience? Define resilience.
Bouncing back, picking
Always,
yourself back up.
always bouncing back.
Those sorts of things.
Always. Now, it could be, I'm from Detroit originally, and bouncing back never seemed like a good idea. Because bouncing back implied that I'm standing in a spot, a circumstance or challenge happens to me, knocks me backwards, and then I return forward into the same position where tragedy struck me moments earlier.
I see.
That does not seem like a good idea to me. Why would I want to bounce back to that spot? I got hit in the head there. No, the David Burden definition of resilience is bouncing forward.
Oh.
You bounce forward and over that experience
Beyond.
that knocked you back, so that you can take that negative experience or challenge or change or whatever it was that sort of knocked you off your game a little bit. You take that and you say, wow, that was unpleasant. I think I've learned something from this, and you go on. When we think of resilience as bouncing back, it sets up this chain of thoughts and behaviors in people that I've seen over the years of them trying to restore the past.
Yes.
They've been through a period of upheaval and uncertainty, and they want the past back. Well, I'd like to be Shirley Bassey. It's not going to happen. So we have to be thinking, what's next? What's forward?
Sure. That's a great acknowledgement. I actually did a relationship workshop back in February. Oh,
that's right, yeah.
And there was a great one of the messages I shared when people have just left a relationship. I know somebody personally who grieved heavily for 8 years, and my purpose in saying this isn't to judge that. It's a process of grieving. I think that the length and all that can be a factor. But one of the things I mentioned in the workshop was that change, particularly in the context of a relationship, is another chance to rebuild what you'd like.
Exactly.
It's not bouncing back and how am I ever going to get back on my feet. It's what can I look forward to? What can my life look like? Anyone who ever motivated.
What's possible for me? And Stephen, I got to tell you, I read quite a few newspapers, different states and a couple of other countries, and it just seems just one person's opinion is that the world is changing and the rule book is yet to be written. We're all just trying to find our way. So for me, reinvention has been that mechanism, because I'm not waiting for the outside world to solidify so I can figure out how I fit into it. I'm creating my own situation around who I am and what my values are. And so I just want to tell people that when you're thinking about reinvention, Resilience is a critical element of that. The other part of it is understanding that transformation and transitions are uncomfortable also, because transitions with reinvention occur at different stages. And just when you think you're comfortable, boom, here's another transition. But, things are just going to be shifting and changing. And so part of reinvention is an attitude adjuster that says, I need to probably just be ready to think on my feet a little bit more. The other part of it is perseverance and persistence. I love the idea of having an unshakable belief in something. I love the feeling that I get, which has sustained me many years, that I know this doesn't look right. I know on the surface this looks like awful, and at the end is near, but I got to tell you, in my soul, I know this is only the beginning. And so sometimes you just have to have an inner certainty that that next circle and those elements that you outlined are a reality for you. And if I can digress for a moment, that's where success buddies differ from supportive friends. Because a success buddy will say, oh yeah, you know what, you've got this. Look at where you've been, look at where you're going. Here are some other things you might want to try. You're in the right direction, and hallelujah for you. Where supportive friends, because you're changing, attacks their reality.
Yeah.
Because they may be getting exactly what they need from you in the old iteration of you.
Yeah.
Their needs may not be met if you reinvent yourself. That colors the type of support and advice you may get from them. So that's why I kind of point that out.
One of the first things you mentioned, David, when we came together in January, was that idea of a success partner or a success buddy. And I hope that we will remember to mention this over and over and over again.
We should put it on a t-shirt,
because that is a huge difference. Are your friends loving you and celebrating and supporting you because you'll still roll around in the mud with them? And is that the only reason they're loving and supporting you?
Or accompany them on their tour of distress.
Or accompany them on their tour of distress or destruction.
Or destruction,
I've been playing drums most of my life. I love music. I had a hard time fitting in with a lot of my peers through high school and college playing music, because a lot of them wanted to live by the lifestyle of live fast and die young. And that's a famous rock and roll mantra. And you can have a wonderful time all the way down, with those circles, as opposed to a success buddy, a success partner, the person who's excited to see you succeed, the person who's excited to see you grow and change and evolve. And the most painful fear when you have a true success buddy or success partner is that you may move on. You may get a position in Europe. You may get a position on the East Coast, but the true success partner would celebrate that. And
instead of having fear.
Instead of having fear. And the longer you have in partnership and with each other, though, the longer you can celebrate that.
Success partners help maintain a positive and hopeful outlook on circumstances. Success buddies engage in activities that expand the mind, not limit the mind. So success buddies are not going to be the guys that, are sitting on some bar stool somewhere, ragging on other people and being disrespectful of other people and talking about how the world is coming to an end. I have people that I know that's what they talk about. And by the way, for all of you people listening that might be calling in from hospitals, sundowning is not just a hospital term, because sundowning occurs with so many people.
Can you explain that, David?
Sundowning is a term that originally reflected the condition of patients in hospitals when the sun actually set. So when the sun goes down, the concept was people get sicker than they would be when the sun was out. The sun's out, there are more people around, more activities, there's more energy being exchanged, one person to the next, more things to see and do. When the sun goes down, it's a period where we're at a slower pace, we're more isolated, a little bit more reflective, and many people do not like what they see when the sun goes down.
Wow.
And as a result, a couple of years ago when I first began to put that idea together, I noticed that when the sun would go down, I would hear from people that would never call me during the day. And they would call me up, and pardon me for being graphic, but they would just regurgitate out all the things that were wrong in their lives. And then I'd be sitting there feeling like, Oh my God, should I jump out the window? And they'd feel great. And they'd say, "Oh, well, thanks, David." So that's not.
Well, sure, they just unloaded.
They
everything
unload
onto
it.
you.
So that is not what
Sundowners.
success buddies do.
No.
Success buddies develop strong emotional conditioning by helping one another identify the emotions and behaviors from the standpoint of, David, that is an old behavior. You're reacting to this based on something that happened before.
Yeah.
Success buddies share information about what books they've read, websites, different things, podcasts. So all of you that are listening, you can join Success Buddies and tell your friends about this podcast. Also, keeping a journal of activities and successes and thoughts. The journaling is really important. I know that some people have issues with that, but I have to tell you that even though it's like an effort to do that, I think it's important. And when you first met me, I had a journal, and I still have one sitting here. I never leave home without one.
It's a beautiful idea. And all of this talk about success buddies, I have had experience in mastermind groups, which not to get too far off topic, but I'd like to touch on that.
Sure.
Two colleagues of mine and myself, we'd get together on a regular basis, and it was a great uplifting experience. We'd meet weekly. If one of us found a great book, we'd get 3 copies of it. If we found a great article, we'd make 3 copies of it, just as a regular function of life. And we'd bring these things to the meetings, and we'd all leave with all these rich resources. And not only did we have 6 sets of eyes and 3 hearts out there beating in the world, not to get too poetic, but literally, because we were always looking out for each other, but as individuals. It shifted our whole mindset, because we knew our choices that day could not only affect negatively or positively ourselves, but we also could positively affect our mastermind partners. So, and that can happen one-on-one if you have a best friend.
I
think
think
it's so powerful.
I think it is so powerful. And if people stopped and thought about, why is this person my friend? And again, for me, I have friends that I've had since I was in grade school. I have friends I met in high school. I had friends I met in college. Well, in college, my life began to take a turn, and not a pleasant one, because of some family issues. And so the friends that I began making were ports in the storm. These were friends that I made because I had problems. And, those relationships have now morphed into friends that I have because they support and love me. But I think that when we take an assessment of our lives by the now and next exercise, when we take a look at whatever our circumstances are right now that help us identify if reinvention is something that we really need to embark on, I think it's important to also take a look at who's around you.
Yes.
Who's around you, and are you getting what you need from them, and are you providing them with what they need? And really taking a look at those relationships.
So
there will be some additional information on the website for this particular topic. But before we get, I wanted to review the an action plan with you.
And
so just real quick, 10 tools of reinvention. Discover new interests. You can do that by meetup.com, joining a new group, making some new friends. Accept where you are right now. But look at where you are, and document where you are. It doesn't mean to judge it. It just means look at it and begin to develop an awareness of where we are and where we'd like to go. Explore not only your likes, but also your dislikes. People that are in the process of seeking jobs, it's a catch-22. If you need a job and you're unemployed, don't have any money, you want to get a job really fast. But the reality is, if you want sustained income, you probably need to look at not only is it a job, yes, but is it something I can see myself doing for a period of time? Create an action plan. You've got to make a plan for what you want to see happen. You also have to say, what's my defining moment? Is it pain? Is it a lack of joy? Oprah Winfrey would call it an aha moment, or where's the moment in time you're going to stand up and say, you know what, enough already. This isn't working. I'm moving to something that is. Communicate your needs clearly. When you begin to do things differently for yourself, you do owe an explanation to the people around you. That's respectful.
Yes.
By doing that, you provide yourself with an opportunity to see who's going to support you in these new activities and not who's going to subvert your energy. Be realistic, network, do it anyway, because half the time the clock goes off in the morning. Do we feel like getting up all the time? No. Do it anyway. So that should be your mantra for reinvention. Do it anyway.
Very good, David. This incredible summary there and laying out an action plan there. We're going to be wrapping up our episode here pretty quickly. This is just our second podcast. It's been a wonderful time. I've learned a lot myself from attending even at this recording here. Very excited.
Get your action plan.
Yeah, go to the website.
The action plan has you identify where you are, what you'd like to see happen, what resources you'll need, what tasks you'll need to involve or engage in, and then also what people you need to tell. So that's a great way. Make several copies. I've used that with, hundreds of thousands of people. And I mean, it's a basic template that is a really great way of kickstarting this process. Also, go to the website and pull the reading list off, because a lot of the dialogue that Stephen and I have had today are from books that we've read, and also a lot of these books are written by people that I have had the benefit of knowing, and they're very helpful tools to give you some new thoughts to think about reinventing your life, because you think about your life, what's it worth? Your value. How many people rely on you for a smile or a kind word or a hug? How many people really look at you as being a gift in their life? Reinvention can keep that gift going for them, but it also is a gift for you in your own life.
Very good. So stay tuned. Keep an eye on our site. We're going to have live events throughout the year, monthly webinars, monthly master classes, and we're going to be addressing subjects including rest, exercise,
food, nutrition,
yes,
money matters,
financial mindset, general prudence and prevention, being careful as we move through the day, enjoying life but not living in a reckless or a haphazard. A whole host of
mind,
subjects we'll be
body,
covering.
Spirit, and pocketbook.
Yes.
And stay tuned, because we're also going to be doing a live event here in San Diego in August. So thank you so much for those of you that did take the time to tune in and listen to us. We hope that something that we said today has resonated with you. Your life is important to us, and I hope that your life is important to you too. Thank you very much.
David, I've had a wonderful time with
you.
Thank
you, Stephen. You're wonderful.
We'll see all of you at the next podcast or our next live event.